Bienvenidos, vuestros mercedes, damas y caballeros, soldados. Welcome back to another video on the Ancient Roman Patrician Gentes. I am your host, Spanish Galleon, and today we will go over the family tree of the Gens Aemilii, or Aemilia. This Gens is one of the most illustrious of the ancient Roman world. Out of about 20 or so families that ran the affairs of Rome, the Gens Aemilia are a part of an elite 6 or so families that were at least around since the founding of the city. Being part of the quote, Gentes Maiores, end quote, an endonym rather than a concrete distinction so far as the sources relate, they held numerous offices, consulships, and years of public service that rival regal dynasties of human history. Another benefit is that they have lasted a long time across many branches, making them appear in a variety of ancient sources and endure from the founding of the city to the beginnings of the empire and the start of the Christian era. But before we dive in, thank you for watching and thank you for your support. Don't forget to like the video, comment on your favorite member, and subscribe for more ancient Roman Patrician content. Now, let's dive into the Gentes. Let me lay some ground rules for the video. 1. I will discuss the Patrician branches of the Gens, so no plebeian branches. 2. I will discuss the branches during the Republican era of Rome, but I may briefly name imperial and Christian era members. 3. I will only rely on ancient sources when discussing each family member. If there are no ancient sources on an individuals, then I leave it to my discretion to speculate on them. 4. I will briefly describe what occurred during their time in office, as this video is already quite long. 5. For the sake of brevity and sanity, all members will be referred to as Aemilius, and not by their individual first name. 6. I will try to pronounce names as faithfully as possible, and refer to each date by the Roman convention, with the Gregorian convention in parentheses. I've also compiled a list of ancient sources, and will post them in the video. Finally, I will break up these videos into multiple parts, and supercut them once it's finished. Thank you for understanding. Let's continue with 3 branches of the Gens. The Aemilii Papi. Marcus Aemilius Papus. This man held the office of dictator for the year 433 AUC, 321 BC. According to Louis, after a humiliating surrender to the Samnites at the Caudine Forks, the consuls and armies disgracefully locked themselves up for the rest of the year. The consuls nominated a dictator to hold elections, but that failed. The consuls then nominated Aemilius, but he too failed at holding elections. A series of interreges was needed to hold successful elections. Quintus Aemilius Papus. This man held the consulship for the years 472 AUC, 282 BC, and 476 AUC, 278 BC, and the other offices of legatus and censor for the years 474 AUC, 280 BC, and 479 AUC, 275 BC. During his first consulship, Dionysius of Halicarnassus briefly mentions Aemilius as being consul 2 years before Pyrrhus of Epirus invaded Italy, 280 BC, and that he was colleague to Gaius Fabricius and commanded men in the Tyrrhenian War. Cassiodorus names him, and Valerius Maximus talks about how Aemilius' dish for worship and salt cellar to the gods wasn't as opulent but still bound with tradition, using what he inherited from his predecessors. During the year 474 AUC to 80 BC, Aemilius was part of a delegation sent to ransom prisoners of war from Pyrrhus. His co-legate, Gaius Fabricius Lascinas, was the main ambassador/legate. So we can only confirm Aemilius' presence in the group. The negotiations were unsuccessful, and they returned to Rome. During his second consulship, Aemilius is known to serve with his intimate friend Gaius Fabricius, as Cicero writes. His brother Fabricius thwarts a plan to assassinate Pyrrhus, fights multiple enemies, and secures a triumph. Aemilius is assumed to partake, or at least be present, for these events. One particular source notes a consul Aemilius Paulus leading an army through a narrow passage that was ambushed by Tarentine ships. So putting prisoners in front of his soldiers, the firing stops. I would leave this detail out, but it fits with the enemy description and timeline of Roman history, that a typo is the most plausible explanation. During his censorship, Aemilius was elected with Fabricius and isn't mentioned elsewhere, or is simply named. Therefore, I will assume this is Aemilius' last public office held. Lucius Aemilius Papus. This man held the consulship for the year 529 AUC, 225 BC, and held the office of censor for the year 534 AUC, 220 BC. During his first consulship, according to Polybius, the Celts of northern Italy feared extermination by the Romans. The Boii and Insubres contacted the Gaesatai and invited/hired them to assist in their invasion of Etruria. The Romans, alarmed, gathered their strength and their allies and sent Aemilius to Ariminium on the Adriatic to stop the Gauls. His co-consul was sent to Sardinia, and a praetor headed an army to defend Etruria. The Gauls entered Etruria, ravaged, pillaged, and laid waste the region before they encountered the praetor's army. They did battle, but the praetor was killed, and the remaining Romans huddled on a hill. Aemilius caught wind of the situation and came to assist the surviving Roman army. The Gauls, fearing losing their booty, left and headed home. Aemilius, not wanting to rush another battle, gathered the remaining army and tailed the Gauls. Aemilius' co-consul arrived in Pisa from Sardinia and encountered the Gauls. Upon learning the previous events, the consul set out to occupy a hill to ambush the Gauls. The Gauls, knowing they'd face a battle on two fronts, prepared for a fight. They charged the co-consular army and killed the consul, while Aemilius, catching wind of a battle, sent his forces forward. The resulting battle was fought stubbornly by both sides, but ultimately Roman shields and swords were more useful. Thus, the Gauls were cut down, with very few escaping. Aemilius captured the booty and went into northern Italy and laid waste the enemy's lands. He returned home and celebrated a triumph. During his first censorship, Aemilius and his colleague Gaius Flaminius, who would later die at Lake Trasimene, had assessed every citizen's property and seemed to support and enforce the Metilia law, which regulated fullers or cleaning wool for use. Aemilius was selected as part of a special commission to assess the financial situation of Rome in the aftermath of Cannae. Marcus Aemilius Papus. This man is related to us by Louis as being Curio Maximus and passing away in 544 AUC. 210 BC. The position Curio Maximus is an intricate history that can be gone over in a different video. For our purposes, Patricians over 50, in good health, and couldn't hold other offices were allowed to be elected into this position. This means that the other Marcus Aemilius holding offices around this time excluded this member. Otherwise, his death led to the election of a plebeian to the position in the following year. Lucius Aemilius Papus. This man held the office of Praetor for the year 549 AUC, 205 BC. During his praetorship, Aemilius was given command of troops and assigned the province of Sicily. During his term, an ancestor of the future Princeps Augustus was under his command. Other than that, nothing of note is found on this member. The Aemilii Barbulae. Quintus Aemilius Barbula. This man held the consulship for the years 437 AUC, 317 BC, and 443 AUC, 311 BC. During his first consulship, Aemilius and his colleague Gaius Junius Babulcus accepted a favorable treaty with the Apulians, maintaining the peace in exchange for suzerainty over the Apulians. Aemilius also led an army into Lucania and captured the town of Nerulum by surprise. The cities of Capua and Antium were also fully integrated into Rome, and when his year was up, he and his colleague passed the reins of government to the dictator Lucius Aemilius Mamercinus Privernas. During his second consulship, Aemilius and his colleague Gaius Junius Babulcus laid forth a complaint against the Senate over some appointees that were not qualified. Louis sees this as a popularity stunt, and the consuls in turn called for the senators before their predecessors updated the roll call. There were also two new offices created, military tribune and naval commissioner. Aemilius and his colleague also casted lots to command the armies, and Aemilius was sent to Etruria. He engaged the enemy, fought them, and barely won, as there were many casualties on both sides. Marcus Aemilius Barbula. This man held the office of dictator for some year between 292 BC and 280 BC. The only ancient source is found in a eulogy inscribed and preserved through the ages. What little we know is quoted here. Quote, Marcus Aemilius Barbula, son of Quintus, grandson of Lucius, dictator. End quote. That is all that can be said about this member. Lucius Aemilius Barbula. This man held the consulship for the year 473 AUC, 281 BC, and the office of censor for the year 485 AUC, 269 BC. During his first consulship, the Tarentines insulted the Romans after breaking a peace treaty, and Aemilius, being consul, enraged along with his fellow countrymen, held various lengthy sessions in the Senate to decide how to react, according to Dionysius. Another source, Orosius, names an Aemilius as leading a Roman army into Tarentine lands and laying waste with fire, capturing towns, and exacting a cruel vengeance, although he ascribes this feat with the previous year's consul, but that I will say is belonging to this Aemilius. Aemilius is supposedly supposed to have been a proconsul, but no evidence has been provided. During the year 485 AUC, 269 BC, Aemilius is noted as a censor, but there is little evidence apart from his name being mentioned. Marcus Aemilius Barbula. This man held the consulship for the year 524 AUC, 230 BC. During his first consulship, Aemilius and his co-consul spent their year campaigning in Liguria, after other tribes were causing troubles and the Romans wanted to befriend some tribes in the area. According to Zonaras, not much else is to be said for this member. The Aemilii Regilli. Marcus Aemilius Regillus. This man held the office of Praetor for the years 536 AUC, 218 BC, 537 AUC, 217 BC, 538 AUC, 216 BC, and 541 AUC, 213 BC. In addition, he was a Flamen Martialis and attempted to run for consul for the year 540 AUC, 214 BC. During his first praetorship, he was in charge of the province of Sicily and was told that the Carthaginians were approaching and to reinforce the island. Aemilius sent envoys and military tribunes to warn and prepare the defense of the island, especially the city of Lilybaeum. He was also in charge of a fleet of 50 ships to defend his province. During his second praetorship, Aemilius was quite busy with many tasks to his office. First, he arranged for games to be played as prescribed by the Sibylline books after the defeat at Lake Trasimene. Second, Aemilius set forth 2 commissioners to contract the construction of a temple to the goddess Concord, whilst the Senate asked him to ask the consuls to return to Rome to hold elections. Third, after organizing games mentioned above, he exhorted the dictator to keep holding the games every 5 years. A busy office given the circumstances Rome found itself in. During his third praetorship, Aemilius was praetor and had a couple of notable events as recalled by Louis. Aemilius took roll call for the Senate, and as the devastation of the Second Punic War took its toll on the Senate, Aemilius also exhorted the Senate to reconsider the abandonment of their allies, the Petelians, even though the Senate could do nothing for them. Before his next office, Aemilius was one of a couple of candidates to run for consul during the year 540 AUC, 214 BC. Aemilius is called out by the consul Quintus Fabius as being a Flamen Martialis and forbidden to be away from Rome so that he could carry out the duties of his office. Nor could he be idle given the circumstances of Hannibal's presence in Italy and the war caused in his wake. Aemilius would not be elected as consul and thus would be instead selected to the praetorship or a similar powerful position within Rome. During his fourth praetorship, Aemilius was tasked with the prevention and cessation of foreign religious practices. As it happened, after Cannae, the Roman populace began to lose faith and started practicing other forms of religion. Aemilius read aloud the Senate's resolution to gather all forbidden reading material with relation to these foreign practices before April 1st. Aemilius was also in charge of some legios in the region of Lucaria and was informed of what I can only describe as insurance fraud. So, public contractors would get hired to ship supplies and then fill up non-seaworthy ships with worthless cargo, have these ships fail and sink, and then run back to the Senate and claim they had lost so many valuable goods to the elements. Aemilius, being informed, relayed the matter to the Senate, but not wanting to cause more scandal, the Senate did nothing. Aemilius would die in 549 AUC, 205 BC, whilst holding the position of Flamen Martialis, or priest of Mars, and would be succeeded by Tiberius Veturius Pilo. Lucius Aemilius Regillus. This man held the office of praetor for the year 564 AUC, 190 BC. According to Louis, he was elected Praetor during the Antiochian War and given command of the naval fleet and raised more forces. Aemilius sailed to Piraeus, Athens port, and linked up with a Greek ally, and they both sailed across the Aegean to Chios. Aemilius then gets an envoy giving him news on the situation before sailing to Samos. Along the way, more ships joined him, and upon reaching Samos, he linked up with another Roman fleet and took command. Aemilius held a council of war, and the previous commander revealed his plan to block the river mouth that led to the enemy fleet location. Everyone disagreed with the plan, and instead, sending part of the fleet to capture another island was popular, although Aemilius decided to sail straight to Ephesus. A failed campaign caused Aemilius to retreat in humiliation back to Samos. Later, Antiochus met with Aemilius and proposed peace. Aemilius held a council and was swayed not to accept peace, and sailed to a different city to protect against further attacks. Aemilius returned to Samos, where his brother Marcus died, and games were held in his honor. After their allies scored a naval victory, a town asked for Aemilius' assistance, and since arriving and not achieving much, Aemilius, at the exhortation of the town and his allies, sailed away. The fleet sailed to a nearby granary, but intercepted and chased pirates back to their stronghold, waited, then landed nearby and pillaged the countryside. The local town struck a deal with the Romans, and they were loading supplies onto their boats. The enemy fleet learned of the Romans' location and swiftly made their way to surround the Romans. The enemy were waiting for a prime opportunity when a local pointed them out to Aemilius, who immediately ordered the Romans out to sea. They were just able to form battle lines when the enemy arrived. The Romans were able to withstand the enemy attacks, break through the center, surround the flanks, and sank several ships. The enemy had lost 13 ships, while Rome lost 2 and their allies a few. Thus a total Roman victory. Aemilius then sailed to Ephesus and demanded their submission, after which he sailed back to Chios. He sent Lucius Aemilius Scaurus to transport troops across the Hellespont and gave part of the spoils to his allies. After this, Aemilius sailed to nearby Phocaea to ask for its surrender. At first they resisted, putting the Romans into a difficult situation. After some talking and deliberation on both sides, the city surrendered and Aemilius ordered an orderly capture. Sadly, his troops began to ransack the city against Aemilius' protest, so he ordered as many people into the town square to personally protect them. Thus is Livy's account. Upon returning to Rome the following year, 565 AUC, 189 BC, Aemilius gave his account to the Senate and they unanimously granted him a naval triumph. Louis gives an account of this triumph, and also during this time he vowed a temple to Lares Parimini, Marcus Aemilius Regillus. This man was the brother of the praetor in charge of the naval fleet. He died at Samos whilst his brother was there, and games were held in his honor. He died in 564 AUC, 190 BC, and nothing else is known. Now, allow me to display what I believe to be the most plausible family tree. Whilst the family tree shows, allow me to relay each branch's achievements, no matter how brief. The Papi achieved 3 consulships, 1 praetorship, 1 dictatorship, 4 other offices, 1 triumph celebrated, and all over an active political period of 116 years. The Barbulae achieved 4 consulships, one dictatorship, and one other office over an active political period of 87 years. The Regilli achieved 5 praetorships, one other office, and celebrated one triumph over an active political period of 28 years. For the familial connections, we have an inscription of Marcus Aemilius Barbula, being the grandson of one Lucius, which the only other possible Lucius would be Priwernas. So, my intuition tells me that it's possible that subsequent branches, including the Papi and Barbulae, are from sons that Priwernas had. This would seem plausible, as he was probably the most exalted member to date, and so would not have too much trouble reproducing. Hence the Papi, Barbulae, and possibly Pauli and Lepidi as well. That being said, I'm not convinced that the Regilli are direct descendants. Rather, they seem like offshoots of a distant son or cousin of one of the more senior branches, possibly not covered as of this video. Still, I feel like apart from a couple of members, it is relatively clear where the relationships are and are mentioned in the source material. Since the lackluster performance in comparison with the Mamerci et Mamercini branch, it seems as if these branches are the junior branches, or illegitimate turned legitimate branches. Either way, this is a guess that is based on intuition. That being said, I have been your host, Spanish Galleon, and thank you for watching this video. This is part 2 of the Gens Aemilia, and part 3 is in the works. Subscribe to receive updates and be there when the video drops. If you appreciate my work and are feeling generous, check out the channel links to support me there. Gracias y viva Cristo Rey, arriba Hispanidad, adelante Hispanos.